The sweet scent of freshly baked peach pie still clung to my dress when I arrived, and I soon discovered that the place I had poured my life into, the very farmhouse I'd helped build, no longer felt like home. But a secret truth lay waiting in my travel bag. It had been a 12-hour drive, a long haul from my quiet little town in Kentucky. Each mile was filled with eager anticipation, a special kind of flutter in my chest. I pictured it all: the tight, warm hug from my son, David, my only child, whom I loved more than words could say. And then the moment I'd finally meet Liam, my very first grandson. Oh, I dreamt of his tiny face, the softness of his baby skin, the smell of him nestled in my arms. I'd rehearsed every tender word, every coo I'd make. My heart ached with the pure, simple joy of it all. I didn't mind the aches in my joints or the stiffness in my back. Every discomfort was worth it. This was family. This was home. I pulled my trusty old car up to the familiar gate of the farmhouse. This wasn't just any house to me. This was the place I'd helped build, brick by brick, with my own hands, with a lifetime of sweat and dreams. Every tree, every fence post held a memory. The air was thick with sound, not the usual quiet country hum, but music blaring, loud and celebratory. Laughter drifted from the garden, a sound that should have warmed my heart, but instead a cold knot began to form in my stomach. I stepped out, my dress still carrying that comforting scent of peach pie I'd baked for David, his absolute favorite. I clutched the boy's present, a soft, cuddly teddy bear I'd picked out with so much love, wrapped in blue ribbon. The front door opened. It was Sarah, my daughter-in-law. My arms instinctively reached out, ready for that embrace, that warm family welcome I'd been longing for. But she didn't move. She didn't embrace me. Her smile was lifeless. Just a thin, strained line across her face. "Oh, it's you," she said, her voice flat, devoid of any real warmth. It was as if I was an unexpected delivery, not a beloved family member. "The christening already happened this morning. We thought you weren't coming." The words hung in the air, heavy and sharp. They pierced right through me. My arms dropped, the present suddenly feeling like a heavy stone. I stood there, frozen, utterly still. My mind raced, trying to grasp what she'd said. "Already happened?" Then I saw him. David, my son, stood on the porch, a drink in his hand, talking to someone. Our eyes met, just for a split second. A flicker of something, maybe surprise, maybe guilt, crossed his face. But then he just looked away. He lowered his head, turned his back, and walked back towards the party, disappearing into the crowd. That was it. No greeting, no explanation, just an averted gaze. In that deafening silence, surrounded by the echoes of their celebration, I felt a complete shift. I was no longer the mother, the grandmother. I was something else. An inconvenience. A problem who had just arrived uninvited to a party that was never meant for me. Sarah slowly, deliberately, began to close the door. I watched her, my throat tight, my heart aching. The door clicked shut, leaving me standing alone, outside, with the music and laughter still mocking me from behind the closed wood. It was in that moment, as the last sliver of light from the warm, inviting party disappeared, that I understood. This wasn't just about a party I'd missed. This wasn't about a forgotten invitation. This was about a place, this very farmhouse, this home that was no longer mine. The silent humiliation was suffocating. I turned slowly and walked back to my car. My legs felt heavy, like lead. I opened the door, got in, and sat there for a long moment. I didn't cry. The tears wouldn't come. Instead, a cold chill ran down my spine, a strange, stark clarity that stung more than any tears ever could. They truly didn't want me there. Not that day. Not in that place that held every precious memory I had. It was a rejection so absolute, so cold, it felt like a physical blow. But little did they know that, besides my memories, that farmhouse held a secret, very well protected, inside my travel bag. The car hummed around me, a familiar comfort, but the silence inside was heavy, much heavier than the miles I'd just driven. My dress still smelled faintly of peach, but the sweetness was gone, replaced by a bitter emptiness. That farmhouse, that very land, it felt like it had swallowed me whole, then spit me out. But as I sat there, the shock slowly began to recede, and a different kind of feeling settled in. A cold, clear realization. This wasn't just about a missed party. This was about me. My name is Eleanor. I'm 72 years old. I've lived my whole life in a small town in rural Kentucky, a quiet place where everyone knows everyone. For as long as I can remember, I was a teacher. Mrs. Albright, they called me. I taught generations of kids to read and write, to love learning. It wasn't just a job. It was my calling. I poured my heart into it, just like I poured my heart into everything else. My world, my true north, was my family. After my husband, George, passed away far too young, it was just David and me. David is my only son, my precious boy. I raised him with all the love in the world, with every ounce of strength I had. George was gone, but his memory, his spirit, lived on in everything we did. He was a good man, steady and kind. He taught me so much about life, about hard work, and about looking after your own. I always believed that's what family was about, looking out for each other, lending a hand, saying yes without a second thought. I never asked for anything in return. When David married Sarah, my daughter-in-law, I was so happy for him. A new chapter. When they wanted to buy their first apartment, I didn't hesitate. I gave them the down payment. It was a good chunk of my savings, but it was for my son, for his happiness. And over the years, if they ever called needing help with bills, I was there. Always. What else are mothers for? That farmhouse, the one I'd just been turned away from, it wasn't just a house. It was a dream, built with love and sacrifice. George and I, we bought that piece of land with a lifetime of savings, every penny we could scrape together. He himself, George, he drew the house plans on crumpled paper at our kitchen table. He planted the very first trees, his hands covered in dirt, a big smile on his face. He loved that land. Before he passed away, not long before, he handed me an old, worn leather briefcase. "Eleanor," he'd said, his voice soft but firm, "this is your security. Never let anyone tell you what to do with it. I kept that briefcase. It sat at the bottom of my closet for years, forgotten. Just old papers, I thought. An excess of my husband's loving care, always looking out for me. My life. It was simple, comfortable. My routine was a steady rhythm of peace. Sunday church with my friends, Miss Carol and Betty, the same ones I'd known since we were girls. Coffee with them on Wednesday mornings, sharing stories, sharing laughs. We talk about our grandkids, about the latest goings-on in town. My greatest joy, though, was talking about David, my son, the engineer, so smart, so successful. And of course, my grandson, Liam, who was on the way. Oh, I couldn't wait to hold him. All I wanted was to be part of that happiness, to smell his baby scent, that sweet, unique smell of a new life, to help Sarah, my daughter-in-law, with the baby, to be there, present, helpful. For me, family was the foundation, the only thing that truly mattered in this world. It was the rock, the anchor, everything. I built my life around that belief. But what I didn't know yet, what was slowly dawning on me as I sat there in my car outside the farm, was that for them, for David and Sarah, I had already become just part of the scenery, someone they didn't really see anymore. The realization hit me hard as I drove away from the farmhouse. It wasn't a sudden blow, more like a slow, chilling understanding that had been creeping up on me for months. Things with David and Sarah, my son and my daughter-in-law, had been different. It wasn't an abrupt change, but a gradual cooling, like a fire slowly dying out. I hadn't wanted to see it, hadn't wanted to believe it. My calls to David, my only son, used to be long, filled with his stories about work, my stories about the town. We'd talk about everything, but lately they were always quick, too quick. I'd call, full of excitement to share something, or just to hear his voice, and he'd sound rushed. "Mom, I'm really busy right now," he'd say, "or I'll call you back later." And he would hang up, leaving me holding the phone, listening to the dial tone. He never called back. Never. It happened again and again, until I started to hesitate before dialing his number. My heart would tighten just thinking about it. And Sarah, my daughter-in-law, the one I'd welcomed into our family with open arms, when I'd ask her about the christening date for Liam, my grandson, her voice would get sweet, almost sugary. "Oh, mother-in-law," she'd say, stretching out the words, "we're still figuring it out. You know how these things are. So much to plan with a new baby." She'd promise, "Don't worry, we'll let you know as soon as we have a firm date." But weeks turned into months. The notification never came. Just a persistent, aching silence where a date should have been. That silence, it hurt me more than any sharp words could have. It was a silence that spoke volumes, a message clearer than anything they could have said out loud. I kept making excuses for them. They're busy. A new baby. David is an engineer. His job is demanding. Sarah has her own life, her own family. I told myself that new parents have so much on their plate. But then, one afternoon, something happened that made my stomach drop. I called Sarah just to check in, to see if she needed anything. I heard voices in the background, a low murmur, then a distinct voice, louder than the rest. It was Sarah's mother, Martha. Martha is a lovely woman, always very proper. I could hear her talking excitedly about party preparations and the guest list. My heart froze right there in my chest. Party preparations. My mind raced. The christening? I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady, light. Will the party be big? My dear, I asked Sarah, trying to sound casual, as if I hadn't just heard anything. There was a pause on her end, a slight hesitation. Then she said, very sweetly, "Oh no, mother-in-law. It'll just be something small, very intimate, just for the closest family, you know? We don't want to tire little Liam out too much, just for the closest family." That phrase echoed in my head. I, Eleanor Albright, Liam's grandmother, the woman who had paid for their first ultrasound, who had bought clothes and toys, who had helped David and Sarah for years, apparently wasn't close enough. The words stung. It felt like a punch to the gut. All this time, all my efforts, all my love, and I was being deemed an outsider. I tried so hard to convince myself it was all in my head. Maybe I was being too sensitive. Maybe I was just getting older, and my feelings were easily bruised. I told myself that their lives were busy, that a new couple has other priorities, that my generation just didn't understand how things worked now. I clung to those explanations like a lifeline, desperate to believe that my son, my only child, hadn't drifted away from me. I wanted to believe that the bond we shared, the unbreakable bond of mother and son, was still there, strong and true. But every unanswered call, every flimsy excuse, every vague promise was like a small splinter entering my skin. One after another, a slow, steady ache that grew with each passing day. I felt it unmistakably. I was slowly, silently being pushed out of the circle of affection that I myself had helped build, the circle where I had always been at the very center. They were building a new life, a new family unit, and it felt like there was no room for me in it anymore. I was becoming invisible, a ghost in my own family's story. And the worst, the very worst part of it was yet to come. I just didn't know how bad it would get. The silence of their exclusion had become too much. It gnawed at me day and night. So I did what any mother, any grandmother would do. I decided to make a surprise visit. I told myself it was the only way. If I just showed up, if they saw me, if they felt my presence, everything would go back to how it was. It had to. I spent an entire day preparing. I filled my car, the same trusty old sedan that had carried me on countless family trips, with presents for my new grandson. Tiny little outfits, soft blankets, a small wooden train set, and of course, the peach pie, David's favorite. I baked it myself, the house filled with that sweet, comforting smell. I imagined him smiling when he saw it, imagined the warmth of his hug. It was all about hope, you see. Hope that this distance, this coldness, was just a misunderstanding. A new baby, new responsibilities. I just needed to be there. The drive was long, 12 hours on the road, but they flew by. Each mile was fueled by the anxiety, a desperate, yearning ache to hold Liam in my arms, to smell that baby smell I dreamt of, to be part of their lives again. I pictured the farmhouse, my home, bustling with family, me welcomed with open arms. That image kept me going. Then I arrived. I pulled my car up to the gate of the farmhouse. The familiar white fence, the big oak tree. My heart pounded in my chest. And just as I stepped out, my worst fear was confirmed. The sound. Music blared from the house, a lively, festive tune. Laughter, loud and uninhibited, drifted from the garden. This wasn't just a quiet family gathering. This was a party. My stomach clenched. They hadn't forgotten me. No, they had deliberately excluded me. The silence, the vague answers, the excuses, it all clicked into place. They simply hadn't wanted me there. The scene at the door, it was quick, over in a flash, but it cut my soul forever. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, opened the door. Her smile, the one I remembered as warm and genuine, was gone. It was forced now, a thin, lifeless line across her face. My arms, still instinctively reaching out, dropped to my sides. I clutched the present for Liam, the soft teddy bear, so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Oh," she said, her voice flat, devoid of any real emotion. She didn't embrace me. She didn't step aside to let me in. "It's you." The words hit me like a physical blow. Not a welcome, not a surprise, just, "It's you." And then she delivered the final, cruel phrase, said with such naturalness, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "The christening already happened this morning. We thought you weren't coming." My world stopped. The music, the laughter, everything outside of me faded into a dull hum. I stood there frozen. The present in my hands suddenly felt like a heavy, useless stone. I looked over her shoulder, past her, into the house, into the bright, festive scene, and there he was, my son, David. He was standing on the porch, a drink in his hand, talking to someone, laughing. Our eyes met, just for a second. His laughter stopped. I saw it, plain as day. A flicker of something in his eyes. Surprise? Guilt? Acknowledgement of my pain, my shock, my humiliation? I don't know. But for that brief moment, he saw me, his mother, standing there on his doorstep with a peach pie and a present for his son, a christening gift for a party I wasn't invited to. And instead of coming to me, instead of saying a word, instead of doing anything, he just lowered his head. He turned away. He walked back to the table to get another drink, to continue his conversation, to disappear into the crowd of smiling faces. That gesture, that averted gaze, that was the final betrayal. It was colder, sharper, more cutting than any words Sarah had spoken. He chose them. He chose the party. He chose to look away from me. I didn't say a word. My throat was too tight, a knot of pure anguish. I didn't cry. The tears simply wouldn't come, as if my body refused to give them that satisfaction. I didn't scream. There was no air in my lungs for it. I just felt the dead weight of the present in my hand and the complete, shattering emptiness in my chest. A void where my heart used to be. Sarah slowly, deliberately began to close the door. I watched her, numb. The last sliver of light from the warm, inviting party disappeared. The door clicked shut, leaving me standing alone, outside, with the music and laughter still mocking me from behind the closed wood. It was in that moment, as I stood there, discarded, that I understood. My love, my dedication, my lifetime of giving, it had all become invisible to the two people I loved most in the world, and they didn't care. I started the engine, the familiar rumble, a small comfort in the vast silence of my own shock. I drove away from that farmhouse, away from the blaring music and the laughter that now felt like a cruel joke. I didn't have a destination, just an instinct to get away, to find a quiet place where I could breathe. I drove until I saw the first small town sign, a cluster of lights against the darkening sky, and there it was, on the edge of town, a little motel, faded sign blinking, vacancy. It looked simple, unassuming, exactly what I needed. I checked in, the young man at the counter barely looking up from his phone. Room 7. The key felt heavy in my hand. I found the door, pushed it open, and stepped inside. The air was still, smelling faintly of dust and old detergent. It was just a room, a bed, a small table. But it was private. It was safe. I closed the door behind me, and the world outside, with all its noise and betrayal, felt miles away. I walked to the edge of the bed and sat down. My body felt tired, but my mind was racing. I still didn't cry. The numbness was still there, a shield against the pain. Instead of breaking down, instead of letting the anger or sadness wash over me, a strange, quiet resolve began to settle in. It was a cold calm, a feeling I hadn't known before. I reached for my purse, the worn leather strap, familiar in my hand. From it, from the very bottom, I pulled out the old leather briefcase, George's briefcase. My husband, George, he had given it to me so many years ago, just before he passed. I remembered his words, soft but firm. "Eleanor, this is your security. Never let anyone tell you what to do with it." I had tucked it away, thought it was just old papers, forgotten it in the rush of life. It had been years, decades probably, since I'd even thought to open it. I ran my fingers over the worn leather, tracing the faded initials. With a click, the latches opened. Inside, neatly tucked away, was a stack of papers, and there it was, right on top, the original deed to the farmhouse, the very place I'd just been turned away from, and beneath it, a letter, a handwritten letter from George. His familiar, steady handwriting filled the page. I unfolded it carefully, my eyes scanning the words. He had explained it all, clear as day. The farmhouse, our farmhouse, was entirely in my name. And not just that. He had added a special clause, a lifelong inalienability clause, as he called it, registered with the county recorder's office. It meant I couldn't sell it, and no one could take it from me, not while I was alive. His words on that yellowed paper were like his voice, speaking to me across the years. "My love, I know your good heart, but the world isn't made of people like you. This land is your fortress. Use it to protect yourself, should the love you give one day not be returned. There, in that cheap motel room, surrounded by silence and the faint smell of dust, my late husband's voice sounded clearer, truer, more powerful than ever before. He had known. He had prepared for this very moment, this possibility of betrayal, of love not being returned. He had seen the world with clear eyes, in a way I hadn't. He had known my trusting nature. And he had protected me. It wasn't about revenge, not truly. The thought never even crossed my mind in that moment. It was about something far deeper. It was about dignity. Mine. The pain of the humiliation, the sting of David's averted gaze, Sarah's cold words. It was all still there, a dull ache in my chest. But now it had company, a cold calm, a certainty, a quiet, unshakable resolve. I knew exactly what I needed to do. They had treated me like an unwelcome visitor in my own home. The home I'd helped build, the home George had protected for me. They had closed the door on me, literally. But now, I was going to remind them, quietly, calmly, with all the calm in the world. I was going to remind them who the true owner of that place was. The deed, George's letter. They were my shields, my sword. I placed the letter and the deed back into the briefcase, snapped it shut, and set it carefully beside me on the bed. The night was still young, and my plan was just beginning to form. The night was still young, and my plan was just beginning to form. I lay awake for hours in that motel room, the cheap curtains doing little to block the faint glow of the street lamp outside. My mind was clearer than it had been in years. George's words, his careful planning, they echoed in my head, a gentle but firm promise of protection. This wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't about bitterness. It was about something far more important: dignity. My dignity. The next morning, as soon as it was a respectable hour, I called my son. My hand trembled slightly as I dialed, but my voice, when I spoke, was steady, calm, stronger than I thought it would be. "David," I said, "I need to meet with you and Sarah. At the farmhouse. Just the three of us." There was a pause on his end. I could practically hear him bracing himself, expecting me to launch into a tearful accusation about the christening. His voice, when he finally spoke, was cold, distant, just as it had been on so many recent calls. "Mom, if it's to discuss what happened at the christening, I honestly don't have time right now. Things are really busy here." I kept my voice level, firm, surprising even myself. "It's not about the christening, David," I said. "Not directly, anyway. It's about the future of the farmhouse. I think it's important we talk." Another pause, longer this time. The word farmhouse must have caught his attention. He probably thought I was going to ask to stay a few days, or maybe complain about the weeds in the garden. He probably figured I was just an old woman looking for attention. After a moment, he grudgingly agreed. "We'll be there this afternoon," he said, and hung up. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask what I meant by the future of the farmhouse. He just agreed. They agreed. probably thinking I would just be a minor inconvenience, a problem quickly dealt with. I spent the morning quietly, just sitting on the edge of the bed, the leather briefcase close beside me. I rehearsed what I would say, not in words, but in feeling. I was not there to yell, not to plead, just to state the truth. When I pulled up to the farmhouse later that afternoon, their car was already there. David and Sarah were standing on the porch, waiting for me. They had the air of owners, surveying their domain. It was the same porch I'd sat on with George, drinking coffee, watching the sunrise over the fields. The same porch where David had taken his first steps. Now they stood there, hands on hips, a picture of entitlement. Sarah immediately started talking, her voice sweet, but with an edge of condescension. "Oh, mother-in-law," she began, not even waiting for me to fully get out of the car. We were just discussing things. You know, with the new baby, we've been thinking about the future, about how a luxury housing development is going to be built on the adjacent land, and how we could sell a part of the farmhouse, you know, the orchard section, and make good money. She gestured vaguely towards the back of the property. David nodded along, not looking me in the eyes. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, avoiding my gaze. Sarah continued, her voice gaining momentum, painting a picture of a new business, a new life, all built on selling a part of this land. They were laying out the entire plan they had made behind my back, the one I had overheard in whispers, the one that had excluded me entirely. I just stood there, listening. I let them talk. I let them spin their dreams, built on something they thought was theirs to control. When they finally finished, their voices trailing off, waiting for my reaction, I didn't say a word. I simply opened my purse. My fingers found the familiar worn leather of George's briefcase. I pulled it out slowly, deliberately, and placed it on the old wooden table on the porch, the same table where we used to peel apples for pie. Sarah frowned, her eyes narrowing at the sight of the briefcase. "What old paper is that, mother-in-law?" she asked, her voice laced with disdain, as if I had brought some useless junk to their grand meeting. I ignored her tone. I opened the briefcase. A worn leather creaked softly. I pulled out the original deed to the farmhouse, the yellowed paper brittle with age, and placed it carefully on the table between us. The afternoon sun caught the faint script. I pointed to the record, my finger tracing the words. "Clear as day," I said, my voice quiet, but it seemed to fill the air, cutting through the silence they had left. "Owner, Eleanor Albright." I paused, letting that sink in. David finally looked up, his eyes meeting mine. They were wide, with a sudden, dawning comprehension. Sarah's confident smirk faltered. And then I pointed to the next line, the one George had so carefully included. "Lifelong inalienability clause." I stated each word, slowly, clearly, letting the weight of them settle in the air. The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched, thick and heavy, between the three of us. Their faces, oh, their faces. They shifted, in that moment, from casual contempt to utter shock. And then, as the full meaning of my words hit them, to pure, unadulterated panic. There were no shouts, just the truth, printed on yellowed paper, reclaiming its rightful place. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt like I could truly breathe again. The revelation of the deed had been silent, but its impact was loud. Sarah's face was a mixture of disbelief and fury, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. David, my son, looked like he'd been struck. The confident air of owners they'd arrived with had completely evaporated. They looked like intruders, caught red-handed. They left the farmhouse that same day. They didn't put up a fight. There was nothing to fight. The yellowed paper on the table, George's clear handwriting, it was all undeniable. They gathered their clothes, just a few bags, their movements stiff, awkward. Sarah didn't speak to me, not a single word. Her eyes, though, were full of a cold, hard anger I'd never seen directed at me before. It was almost a relief. At least now, there was no pretense. David, my son, lingered for a moment by the car. He tried to say something, I could see it. His mouth opened, his shoulders slumped. An apology, maybe, an explanation. But the words died in his throat. He just stood there, looking at the ground, then at me. My heart ached, a deep, familiar ache. But it was different now. Not sharp and raw, but dull, resigned. I just shook my head, a gentle, slow movement. There was nothing more to be said. The truth was out. The damage was done. Trust, once broken, doesn't mend like an old vase. You can glue the pieces back together, but the cracks are always there, always visible. And this vase, our vase, it had shattered into a million tiny shards. He got into the car and they drove away. The gravel crunched under their tires, and then the sound faded into the quiet hum of the countryside. In the following months, the farmhouse became my world again. My refuge. The very place that had been the stage for my greatest pain transformed, little by little, into my greatest comfort. I moved permanently, brought my few belongings from my small-town home. It felt right, like coming home truly. I didn't rush anything. There was no need. The days stretched out, long and peaceful. Little by little, I began to arrange the house my way. I moved furniture, put up old photographs, things that truly belonged here, things that spoke of George and our life, not just David and Sarah's fleeting presence. I planted a lavender garden by the porch, rows of fragrant purple. I'd always wanted one. Now, the scent drifted through the open windows, a sweet, calming aroma. My friends, Miss Carol and Betty, they started coming over for afternoon coffee on the porch. We'd sit there, just like George and I used to, watching the sun dip low, sharing stories, sharing silences. The silence, oh, that was the biggest change. The silence that once scared me, the one filled with their neglect, now brought me a profound peace. It was a good silence, a silence where I could hear the birds, the rustle of leaves, the quiet hum of my own thoughts. It was a silence where I could finally just be. He came closer, cautiously, then gobbled it down. He stayed. I adopted him, of course, and I named him George. He followed me everywhere, a quiet, faithful companion. He curls up at my feet now when I read, a warm weight. He reminds me that sometimes the purest love comes from the most unexpected places. My life didn't become a fairy tale. I wasn't suddenly young again or wealthy or surrounded by a bustling family. It was still simple, quiet, but it was mine again. It was a dignified life. I didn't seek revenge, not truly. All I wanted was my space back, my home, my peace, and I had found it. David calls me sometimes. His voice is different now. Heavy with guilt, I think. Or maybe just regret. I answer. I'm polite. I ask about Liam, my grandson. I ask if he's growing, if he's happy. But I maintain a safe distance. The phone calls are short. There's a boundary now, a clear line in the sand that wasn't there before. I learned the hard way that love, even the deepest mother's love, doesn't give anyone the right to disrespect you. And that sometimes the greatest proof of self-love, of truly caring for your own heart, is knowing when to close the door. Not just on a party, but on expectations, on hurt, on things that are no longer meant to be. I close my eyes sometimes, sitting on my porch swing, with the smell of lavender in the air, and I feel the sun on my face. A clean soul, a clear mind, a peaceful beginning. My heart has found a quiet place now, a kind of peace I wasn't sure I'd ever feel again. Sitting here on my porch, with the scent of lavender and the soft purr of George, my dog, beside me, I think about everything, about how far I've come, about what I've learned. It wasn't an easy lesson, not by a long shot. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to face. You know, when you spend your life giving, when you pour yourself into others, especially your family, you don't stop to think about what might happen if that love isn't returned. You just give. That's what I did. I gave my time, my help, my savings, my entire heart to David, to Sarah. I believed in looking out for them, supporting them, being there, no matter what. That's what family does, right? That's what I always understood. I thought my place was secure, woven into the fabric of their lives. But then, things started to shift. Slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. A missed call here, a vague answer there. A feeling that I was becoming a little less important, a little more cold realization that I was no longer seen, not truly. And you? Have you ever felt invisible, precisely to the people you helped grow the most? To the ones you nurtured, you guided, you poured your very essence into? It's a strange feeling, isn't it? To watch as they build their lives, thriving because of the foundations you helped lay, and then to find yourself on the outside looking in, like you're just part of the scenery, as I felt. Something to be overlooked, or worse, bypassed entirely. It's like your story, your struggles, your sacrifices, all those years of effort, of putting their needs before your own, were suddenly forgotten, just stored away, like old photographs in a dusty box, as if they no longer had value. Have you ever felt that? That everything you gave, everything you were, was suddenly deemed worthless, pushed aside because it didn't fit into their new plans, their new lives? It's a gut-wrenching feeling, knowing that your lifetime of love and effort can be dismissed so easily. This pain of being cast aside by those we love is one of the deepest there is. It cuts right to the bone. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about family, about connection, about your own worth. For a long time, I blamed myself. Did I do something wrong? Was I too much? Not enough? Did I ask for too much? even when I asked for nothing at all? These thoughts gnawed at me, but sitting here now, in the quiet dignity of my own home, the home George protected for me, I understand something profoundly simple, yet so powerful. It wasn't about me being too much or not enough. It was about them forgetting what it means to truly respect another human being, especially one who has given so much. It was about them forgetting my dignity, my worth as an individual, not just as a mother or a grandmother. It was about them treating me as if my feelings didn't matter, as if my very presence was an inconvenience. It opened my eyes to something I see happening around me all the time, especially to older folks. We give, we care, we build lives, we pass on wisdom, we offer support. And sometimes, in return, we are met with indifference, or worse, dismissal. As if getting older means you lose your voice, your relevance, your right to be treated with kindness and consideration. As if your years of experience are a burden, not a blessing. I learned that respect isn't a foundation, and if that foundation crumbles, you have to find a way to rebuild your own sense of self, your own peace, your own boundaries. You have to stand up for yourself, even when it feels like the hardest thing in the world. Even when it means facing the people you cherish most. This experience, it taught me that my worth is not determined by how others treat me, or by how much I am needed. My worth is inherent. It just is. It taught me that sometimes the greatest act of love for yourself is to step back, to protect your own heart, and to reclaim your space. It's not about bitterness or revenge, not for me. It's about truth. It's about dignity. It's about understanding that every human being, no matter their age, deserves to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. And here I am, in my home, the lavender blooming, George curled at my feet. The silence is no longer empty. It's filled with peace. It's a new beginning, yes, but it's also a powerful continuation of my story, one where I am finally the author. And this chapter, it's about claiming my own space, my own voice, and remembering that sometimes you have to be your own strongest advocate. You have to protect your fortress, just like George wanted me to. This pain of being cast aside by those we love is one of the deepest there is. It cuts right to the bone, doesn't it? It makes you question everything you thought you knew about family, about connection, about your own worth. For a long, long time after that day at the farmhouse, I did. I blamed myself. Did I do something wrong? Was I too much? Did I ask for too much even when I asked for nothing at all? Especially one who has given so much. It was about them forgetting my dignity, my worth as an individual, not just as a mother or a grandmother. It was about them treating me as if my feelings didn't matter, as if my very presence was an inconvenience. And that realization, once it truly settled in, it was like a balm. It hurt, yes, but it also started the healing. It opened my eyes to something I see happening around me all the time, especially to older folks. We give, we care, we build lives, we pass on wisdom, we offer support. And sometimes, in return, we are met with indifference, or worse, dismissal, as if getting older means you lose your voice, your relevance, your right to be treated with kindness and consideration. as if your years of experience are a burden, not a blessing, as if the stories held within our hearts, the very stories that built the world around them, suddenly no longer matter. I learned, you see, that respect isn't something you earn repeatedly from those you love. It should be a given, a foundation, a deep, unwavering understanding of another's humanity. And if that foundation crumbles, if it's neglected or deliberately undermined, then you have to find a way to rebuild your own sense of self. You have to find your own peace, redefine your own boundaries. You have to stand up for yourself, even when it feels like the hardest thing in the world, even when it means facing the people you cherish most. Because your peace, your heart's truth, that's sacred. This whole experience, the bitter taste of betrayal and the quiet triumph of reclaiming what was mine, it taught me that my worth is not determined by how others treat me or by how much I am needed by them. My worth is inherent. It just is. It taught me that sometimes the greatest act of love for yourself, for your own spirit, is to step back, to protect your own heart, to reclaim your space, your home, your story. It's not about bitterness or revenge, not for me. It's about truth. It's about dignity. It's about understanding that every human being, no matter their age, deserves to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. Truly valued, not just tolerated or overlooked. And here I am now. The farmhouse, once a place of pain, is truly my sanctuary. The lavender is blooming, the air is sweet with its perfume. George, my faithful dog, is curled at my feet, a warm, comforting presence. The silence here is no longer empty. It's filled with peace. It's a new beginning, yes, but it's also a powerful continuation of my story. One where I am finally the author, holding the pen firmly in my hand. This chapter, it's about claiming my own space, my own voice, and remembering that sometimes you have to be your own strongest advocate. You have to protect your fortress, just like my dear George wanted me to. Life goes on, of course. My son still calls sometimes, polite, distant, full of unsaid things. I still ask about Liam, my grandson, praying he knows a love that is unconditional, a presence that never wavers. My heart aches for that bond with Liam, the one I've been denied. But I know my boundaries now. I sleep soundly here, under the stars, knowing I honored myself, knowing I finally understood George's wisdom all those years ago. And if you want to keep receiving real stories like this, if these words resonate with you, if you felt these very same feelings of being overlooked, of finding your strength again, then please pay attention. Sometimes things happen without you even realizing it. YouTube might be unsubscribing you without warning. So take a moment, just now, if you feel a connection to what I've shared. Confirm you're still subscribed to the channel and hit that notification bell. It's a small way to ensure we can keep sharing these moments of truth. These lessons learned from life's journey, right here, together. Because knowing you're not alone in this.